Everyone has their favorite loop, and for me, it's the for loop. I really like the for loop. I know from past experience that students tend to like the while loop because it's sort of lays it all out, but they're the exact same. They just have things in a different order. So here is the for loop. So notice the syntax. We have for, and then we have parentheses, and we have three different statements in the parentheses. So first I am initializing and declaring. That's my step one. Separated by a semicolon. Then I have what's normally my Boolean, separated by a semicolon. And then I have my what I want it to do, increase or decrease. Open curly bracket, and here's my shape. It's so simple. It's 2 lines of code. So let's just break this down and compare it with the while loop. So look at the while. We have step 1 here. In the for, we have step 1 here. In the while, we have step 2 here. That's our Boolean. That's the same that we did right here. Then we have step 3 in the while where we increase it. That's the same step 3 here. So this is just 1, 2, and 3 all together. It's the exact same as what we have over here. And then in step 4, we have the shape where we use the variable. Now in the while loop, you can switch these two. You could put the shape and then the x equals x plus 10 after. Step 3 and step 4 can move back and forth. It doesn't matter. But in the for loop, it has to be in this order. So the things to notice simply is just use the word for and everything's separated by a semicolon, but then you have your open and curly bracket just like you would have for your if statements or your while statements, and then you have your shape. So here are the steps. We've already talked about this. So what would you need to do if you want the ellipse to start out small and grow? So I want my variable to start out, well, first of all, what's the variable that needs to move? Is it my x or my y? No, they're not moving. The x and y will stay right in the middle. It's going to be my diameter that's moving. So I would have first initialize and declare my diameter variable, and then my Boolean, when do I want it to stop, and then how much do I want it to increase as it's growing. So pause for a second and see if maybe just looking back at this slide at the formula for how this works, if you could try to figure out how to do that with an ellipse. Okay, so here's the code. In this example, I use WH for width, height for my variable instead of diam. You could call it whatever you want. Bob's hot dog stand, that's fine. So I have my variable I initialized as an integer, and I gave the name WH, and I declared it to equal 20. Semicolon, and then I'm saying while WH, or sorry, not while, but essentially if in English you're saying while it is less than width, have it increased by 10. Okay, so I'll copy this over and demo tweaking it a little. Here's my old while statement. All right, so if I want it to stop earlier, let's say I would have it go to, I'll start it at a smaller number or finish it at a smaller number. Okay, if I want to have it start out larger, instead of starting out at 20, I could start it out at 50. And now my, what I call the donut hole will be bigger. Okay, what else could we do? If I wanted to go the opposite direction, I want to go large to small, I would say I would start it out large. So I'm starting it out at 300, and I'm saying while it is greater than, I have to switch that, 50, decrease by 10. See, it's all there in one line, which is why I really like this loop. That's my personal favorite. And I get the same thing, but it started with my larger one and it went smaller. Okay, so at this point, it's really just practice. So try this one. This is the same like we did with the while loop, so this would be good to kind of compare the two. I'm going to start with my rectangle up here, and I want it to keep looping until it hits the bottom. So pause and try it out. Okay, so here's the answer. I initialize and declare my first variable, up here, y is the only one that needs to move at 10. And I'm saying keep going if you're less than 450. Here's point 450, and keep increasing by 20 and use your shape. Okay, so pause the video, try to recreate with another shape that we haven't used yet, a different pattern. Maybe it's just a rectangle moving from left to right, something like that, without looking at the sketch as much as you can, and then come back. Okay, the last thing I want to cover here, that something cool that you can do with the for loop is you can nest it. So what if I want to have things increasing, going across the screen, both on the X and the Y? All right, so what I can do is I start out with my first condition, my first for loop, that's going to be the X repeating. I open it up, and then I don't close it yet. I put in my next for loop. So this is going to be the one for the Y. So the Y is inside the for loop. And then whatever it is I want it to do. And then this is the closing for the for loop for the Y. This is the closing for the for loop for the X. And this is the closing for my draw. So here we have the code for this. So this is pretty good code to start with. So you can copy and paste this in. So here's my X. I'm going all the way to the end of the screen. By the way, it's kind of seizure provoking, so just watch out. And then I open it, and then I put in the code for my Y. So you could use this as a starting point to get to any one of these. But just try replacing the squares with different shapes, such as a triangle or a Bezier. I do have this code on Blackboard, so you could download this if you want. But just try taking this code and instead of a rectangle here, put in a triangle. Now a triangle needs a whole bunch of different coordinates, right? It needs 6 coordinates. So some of them could be static, or they could all be like x, y, and then x plus 50, y minus 50, x plus 100, y minus, or y plus 20, something like that, just using x and y over and over again. So for example, triangle, and I'll say x plus 50, y minus 100. Oops, that's not a minus. And then x plus, actually I kind of want them smaller. I wish I would make this not jump by like 50 and 100. And I'm going to make this one y as well. So let's see what this gives us. Whoa, crazy. Okay, so maybe I want to be able to move them further apart. So maybe instead of having them so close together, maybe let's try moving them apart so I could start seeing them, because right now they are so close together. Oh my gosh, that's sort of kind of cool, but it's also insane. Okay, and then I could piggyback off of that. Actually, I don't need to copy that. I could add a circle, and I could also put X and Y, and I'm just going to make it like 20 on it. Just use that same variable. Would help if I spelled it correctly. See what we'll get. Yeah, so now I have some circles going on there too. Okay, and maybe I still want to separate them out even more. I want to see what they look like with more space going on in between them. Okay, I don't know, something bizarre, but it could be cool. So that's what I want you to do. You're still just using one variable, an x and a y, but start adding shapes and add shapes that would allow you to repeat the x and the y there. And then after you've done that, save, try this challenge. You can sketch this out on paper if you want to first, but try to recreate all of this wonderful image here, and you can use either the while or the for loop. Okay? And then hopefully after all this, you feel pretty comfortable with them, but let me know what your questions are.